Hello and good morning. Welcome to Digital Thursday. Today we are going to be examining the inquiry process and how we can support the inquiry process with digital tools. Please remember to have one tab open in order to watch the YouTube channel and another tab in order to collaborate with us. I'll give you a minute to settle in, and I'm going to get started with the presentation. Used in the month of April, on our Digital Thursdays, we are going to be looking at how we can support the inquiry process with digital tools. And some of the digital tools are really things that we've already examined in previous months, but just looking at it in different aspects and how we can use tools in a variation of ways and what it may look like depending on what part of the process you're in. If you wish to collaborate with us during the session, please do so with the document link that was provided to you by your principal. It's the same one that you found the YouTube link on in order to engage with the session. As well, you can collaborate with us on Yammer or Twitter using the hashtag DPChats. If you are wanting to watch this later, please visit our YouTube channel, which is DPCDSB Chats. And you can also, during this time, if you're watching it after the session has already been recorded, please remember you can go to Twitter or Yammer and send out a message for us, and we'll be sure to see it and get back to you when we get back on there at some point. So if you're not watching it during the live session, please feel free to still ask your questions if you do have them. When we begin thinking about the inquiry process and talking to our students about actively engaging with our learning, three of the Catholic graduate expectations that stand out are a collaborative contributor, a reflective and creative thinker, as well as an effective communicator. Now, there's a lot of different parts of the Catholic graduate expectations that really do fit into inquiry, but we want to really focus on a few that really seem to be pulled out during this part. So when we are collaborating with each other, we're not only collaborating with our peers, but we're collaborating and building information. We're possibly reaching out to our community and even globally when we are searching on the internet and trying to find the best solutions. So we're bringing meaning from those that we work with, not only in a face-to-face atmosphere, but possibly online and what that looks like. And what it looks like to be a collaborative contributor and how we behave with one another and respect one another and contribute to the overall good of finding the solution. The other one is a reflective and creative thinker. And throughout this process, it's a really reflective one. When we're working through inquiry, we're going in and out of the stages. And in order to evaluate and analyze, you really have to stop and think. And to come to a solution, you need to be able to solve the problem and think of a creative way to engage with the information and data that you've collected during the stages. And finally, being an effective communicator at all stages is imperative. So really right from the beginning, you're trying to build and formulate questions to one another, you're listening to one another, and you're making a plan and writing things out and eventually coming to a solution. Sometimes it doesn't always look like an essay, but the ability to communicate your solution can happen in so many different ways. And we're going to look at how that may look like as we move through the process. We're just going to take a glance here at the inquiry process and what it entails. As you see over here, you see that we have 5 gears that are intertwined together. And really, we understand that as the process itself is that each one of these parts of the process are intertwined together. If we are beginning with the idea of formulating our questions, we have a big idea or a problem that's set out. And we're going to begin to explore it and maybe talk about some things that we see and some things that we wonder when it comes to that. From that stage, you may go and gather and organize and some relevant data that is connected to the questions that you are looking at. And then you may begin to possibly make a plan of action and communicate what that might look like. What's our next steps after we've gathered some information? What do we need to do? And then we may go back here and begin to formulate questions and think about what we're doing and if we need to revise our questions. At that point, we may possibly, before we interpret and analyze, have to gather some more information depending on if our question has changed, and then interpret what we have, evaluate and draw conclusions, and go back to communication, really being able to show logically what our solutions were and what it came to. When we think of the inquiry process, it's not that idea where the students they do work independently to be able to demonstrate their answer to the question that you're asking them. However, in the beginning, you're really seeing that the role of the teacher is quite strong. The modeling of the process really begins right from the beginning. It's you don't expect students just to be able to understand what that inquiry process looks like in your class, and you're really leading them through those stages, and eventually you're releasing the responsibility to them where the role of the students becomes even greater. So here you see in the beginning, if we're looking at this one part as the inquiry process in total, so we're just looking down the column here, you're seeing that for the most of it, the teacher's modeling the majority of it, and then possibly near the creation point, they're evaluating, making some, drawing a conclusion from what you've gathered and interpreted together, and then communicating what they think the solution may be. However, as we move down the inquiry process, maybe you're spending some time formulating questions together. You're kind of guiding them in the gathering and organizing phase, but then you're opening it up to them being able to interpret and analyze because that part's been modeled and they've seen that. So you're releasing that responsibility gradually, right? Each part of it, as it's modeled and they're able to work through it, the next time around, there's a good chance that they're going to be able to work through that because they have an idea of what that process may look like.
Most educators are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, a model that classifies different levels of human cognition in thinking, learning, and understanding. As a teacher, you've likely used this taxonomy to guide the development of curriculum, assessments, and instructional strategies. But how is this model affected in an age of digital technology, and how might it influence your instructional design? Let's take a step back. Bloom's taxonomy was created in the 1950s by educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom and his colleagues. The three lower levels, knowledge, comprehension, and application, are more basic levels of cognition, also called lower order thinking skills. This would include concrete thinking, memorization, and understanding. The three upper levels, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, referred to as higher order thinking skills, include abstract, critical, metacognitive, and creative thinking. Some have likened the model to a mountain or a stairway, where teachers set learning objectives and design learning experiences to guide students to higher levels of thinking. The taxonomy has become an important model for structuring students' learning processes. In the 1990s, Bloom's taxonomy was updated by a group led by David Krathwohl, one of the original authors, and Lauren Anderson, a former student of Bloom's. To make the model relevant to 21st century learning, one of their main changes was updating the nouns associated with each level to action-oriented verbs. This differentiation positions thinking as an action-based process rather than one of passive acquisition. For example, knowledge was replaced with remember, analysis was changed to analyze, and so on. They also reordered the last two steps. Evaluation, which was previously at the top, was moved down, and creating, formerly synthesis, was moved to the top. With this framing, educators have several different verbs, questions, and instructional strategies associated with each level. In recent years, there have been many iterations and metaphors for Bloom's taxonomy, including an orange, where the 6 levels are distributed more equally, moving cogs, representing an interworking system in which creation is dependent upon all of the other aspects, or a flipped pyramid illustrating an emphasis on higher order thinking skills. But in thinking about how technology affects this model, consider it as Bloom's digital taxonomy. This updated version aims to expand upon the skills associated with each level as technology becomes a more ingrained and essential part of learning. For instance, some propose that new action verbs can be applied within each level. Let's take a look at creating, in which learners are designing, inventing, and constructing a piece of work that shows what they know. One could add new digital verbs to creating, like blog, remix, or program. These verbs refer to possible learning activities that incorporate digital technologies in which students are creating. Adding digital verbs to the taxonomy also promotes 21st century skills like communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Others have taken the 6 levels of the taxonomy and aligned them with technology tools that help foster each level. For example, as a teacher, you can think about how to integrate apps and websites that help students remember content, like flashcards or drill and practice tools. There are tools that help students analyze and make sense of content, like reading charts, graphs, or mind maps. Or you can think about what tools support student creation, like producing, podcasting, vlogging, coding, editing, and more. With these examples, the focus should not necessarily be on the tools themselves, but on how the tools can be vehicles in transforming student thinking at different levels. So, as you weave technology into your teaching, ask yourself, how can the tools you use support different cognitive levels? Which tools help you address lower order thinking skills? And which can help challenge students' higher order thinking skills? Consider how Bloom's digital taxonomy can help you identify ways to design technology-rich learning experiences for your students.
As we move into the different steps of looking at inquiry, I want to just take a minute to stop. And I think one of the most imperative things I heard while listening to that video was, how can we use our technology tools properly to enhance the process of learning and enhance each stage, whatever thinking skill, or whether they're working on creating or evaluating, what tools work best in order to help students become more successful during that stage, and what might that look like? So one of the first things as teachers is we're thinking of the idea of formulating questions. The first place to go is our curriculum. When we're exploring our events, developments, or issues related to the overall expectations, a lot of it is laid right out within our curriculum itself. So when you're taking a look, depending on what you're teaching, usually you're going to find that idea where you're seeing that we're generating possible solutions, we're creating a plan, we're exploring a range of elements or things. So really, some of these you're seeing here that it's giving a stage of a process we see in the arts. Here in world studies, we have already embedded to the overall expectations, you see the idea of inquiry. And within that curriculum itself, it has big ideas and framing questions to really guide each expectation. So that's already set, actually embedded within the curriculum there. When we take a look at science, already within the cycle itself of initiating and planning, you see that we're thinking and brainstorming. So we're formulating those questions, we're identifying problems, so we're analyzing what it may be, we're going back to formulating our questions here, making predictions, defining and clarifying the inquiry. So you see that embedded within the curriculum itself, it already shows you a guide as to how we may be able to start our inquiries. So one of the first places is you want to look for entry points as well as topics within the curriculum that will engage our students' interests and involve them in a problem or issue. We want to remember not to go too complicated, although not too simplified, somewhere that's going to reach out to them and really engage them in searching for the information and solution. Some of the tools that we examined are Padlet, previous to in our past Digital Thursdays, and we're going to be looking at Mindomo as well. These two here, so the Mindomo and the Padlet, we're going to consider using them in those first stages of inquiry in which we are formulating our questions. So here you see a copy of World Studies. So I see my expectation here. I see a big idea, and then I see a framing question. So this is right into my curriculum. I've opened it up, and I'm able to pull out some questions to get my students thinking. So the first one that I built from the curriculum was, how do the natural characteristics of Canada influence human activity, and how might human activity influence Canada's natural characteristics? Here's a great thinking question. The students already have some background knowledge in which they understand what Canada's natural environment looks like. For the most part, they've grown up here, and if not, they've had some experience because they are living here at this point, now being within the school. This is a good point in which we're contributing, because we don't always know how long our students have been here, or what their background may be with Canada itself. So here you see in the Padlet, we basically set up a graphic organizer in which the students are able to tell us what they see, what they think about the question, and what they wonder about the question. This is a great place to start, because when you begin to really put down what you see, you can see in the Padlet they can add the pictures to it, so it really doesn't have to be text. They can add video to it. So we're using our technology now to enhance that idea of formulating questions. It doesn't just have to be that text, but we know that these pictures and the multimedia may really get the students thinking in different ways and possibly enhance what they're wondering because of the additional tools that they have to build. Now, the Padlet itself, you may begin building here, but it's something that the students can go back and build upon. It's not something that they have to do right there and then there's an endpoint to it. There is no real endpoint. They can go back, reevaluate, and change things around, add to them, and this can be modeled by the teacher with the class, or eventually something that the students, especially on the secondary level, are building on their own or within their groups. The other idea is the idea of Mindomo. So yes, we're looking at that certain concept and we're building upon that one idea or a problem. But we can also be brainstorming info for sources, or evaluating list of creating and sharing formats. So how are we going to make this plan together? What are we going to do with this information, especially if we're working in teams? And understanding or developing, you could be doing this as a class or in groups, criteria, right? What is it that we want to be able to do, and where is it that we want to go? So these are the beginning stages of really understanding where we want our inquiry to go. And Mindomo was great because it's not only something that you can then again add your graphics, add video, and add multiple connections and see the bigger idea, but it's also something that multiple people can be contributing to all at once. So we can have a team of people collaborating and adding to it. And Padlet, as well as Mindomo, is something that students can come back to on any device from anywhere because they're both web-based at any time. So if they're kind of stuck in class and they're thinking, but nothing's really coming to mind, if something does come to mind afterward, they can continue to add to it. It's not something that stops once they leave the classroom. This leads us into the idea of gathering and organizing. So after we're done formulating these questions, we've already kind of done some research. We're using our prior knowledge. We've possibly gone out, grabbed some images, grabbed a video, just kind of putting together initially what we know. So we're going to begin probably really having a sense of what question we're going to be looking at. We're going to begin to collect some evidence, determine if our sources are credible and reliable, and record the sources of the evidence of information they are using. So at this point, as we move through the next three stages, really, and we could be in and out, as I said previous, but we're really using our critical thinking and information literacy skills. So we're learning how to be a digital citizen that uses effective strategies to search for information, such as keywords, narrowing a search, using credible online resources, evaluating and reflecting really critically as to whether or not our sources are useful and whether or not we should be extending upon what we have. And we're applying an inquiry model together to use and evaluate information to build our knowledge and understanding of the world around us. So this is one important part of being a digital citizen that should be embedded within our research. And it doesn't matter what course the students are working within, they really have to remember to think critically. And that important part now that since there's so much information out there, how do we pull it all apart and understand it? I'm going to move just to this one because I want you to understand before we talk about a specific search engine, in which I want you to see what that looks like. But how do search engines work? So when we go into search engine, most of you probably know the idea of the common search engines: Google, Yahoo, Ask, Bing. What does that look like? So we enter in a keyword, a significant term or phrase related to whatever it is you hope to evaluate. But you need to remember the search is not searching the entirety of web. It's only searching that search engine. So only the list of websites that the search engine has indexed will be found. And it could be billions, but it's only the ones that have been indexed by either Google or Yahoo, wherever you may go. So search engines don't know why you want the information. They simply find information according to the words you've entered. So these results are not recommendations. So they're not like, hey, maybe this is what you're looking for. Search engines don't rank the results by content. They look at your words, use a mathematical equation, and figure out what they think is the best guess for you using that formula. And they're only working on the words. One way we can help students is by having specific search engines that may help them, narrow down and make sure that they have credible resources. One is called Sweet Search. So sweetsearch.com searches only 35,000 websites that have been evaluated and approved by internet research experts, librarians, teacher consultants, and it lets researchers choose the most relevant results from a list of credible websites that are coming in. So really saving on some of that time and knowing that we're finding information that has been vetted already by others. So helping students understand that that one search engine isn't going to find everything for them is really important. Sometimes I don't know if they actually realize that. So teaching that skill is imperative. We're going to take a look at some different ways that we can search and different words we can use and symbols we can use. And the first we're going to look at is Boolean operators. And this may give you a sense of how to narrow some things down and help really weave and cut through some of everything and billions of websites that are indexed on the web. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. So you can see that as it's saying that it depends on all how you phrase your words and what you're doing. So whether we're using the and, the or not, you're really being able to find pages that might use several words or not have specific words in it. So making sure you're canceling things out. It really does cut back on a lot of different websites and things that may not be relevant from coming up. So that idea here that when we think of punctuation and symbols, a couple examples may be when you use the dash, which is also can be considered as minusing something out. So when you use a dash before a word or site, it excludes sites with that info from your results. So you can see here it says Jaguar speed minus car. So I know that I want the animal jaguar and talking about the speed of the animal, not about the jaguar, the speed of the car, right? So it's taking that out. So the search engine automatically knows, okay, I got to leave anything to do with a jaguar car out. So that's important. It really does cut away from a lot of different things. Quotation wise, if you were to put uh, a word or phrase in quotes, the results will only include pages with the same words in the same order as the ones inside the quotes. That's huge, right? You want to find something specific that says that they're not just looking all over, then that really does cut away a lot of the junk that may be out there. So remembering if this is something that's interesting to you and really as a teacher, you should be modeling some of this idea of how to search properly using specific search engines that really will lead students to understanding how important it is to learn how to think critically when searching on the web. So using specific search operators, punctuation symbols is really going to help narrow in their search and find the relevant information they need. Another thing is, how do we know if a site is credible? So really, we're taking a look at who the author is, what their credentials are, who is making the information available, how is the site funded, when was the information first published, and has it been updated recently, right? So make sure it's not been out there a long time and outdated, and that it's really who's the one doing this, and are they credible? Should we be really listening to what they're doing? One popular site out there is something called Alexia, and it allows you to search a web address to find the other sites that link to it. So you can see if other people think it's credible or if it's linked to other websites that are credible and what that might be. So if I were to go out here for a minute and find, if you're looking for something in the end, you're looking for, whoops, I just saw it a second ago. Let me try it again. There we go. So search engine ranking. We're coming in, we're taking a look. There we go. So here we are. So here, this part itself, it gives you some search engines that may help you, that actually help you figure out where you may be able to search, top sites, academic, things like that, right? So this already gives you that idea there. I want to be able just to check into, see if this comes up differently here. This one, the analytics, the actual analytics for the web. So remember that, see, it's still under the same one. I just wanted to search it in a little bit further. So when I first went into it, it just gave me a lot of different sites that are credible, that will help me be able to figure out all the different places that I can go to find information. However, if I'm looking for one site, and let's just say I'm doing in the Toronto Star News, I might be looking up, I'm just going to go to sites. So I may be looking up something and I'm going to then copy my URL. So I'm in the news right now, taking a look at one of my websites, and I'm going to enter in the website. And I'm going to ask it to find it. So here, and what you see here is how popular is the star.com. So you're able to see the traffic ranks, how many people have come in, who's looking at it. So you're also seeing where in the world it is actually getting its most visitors. So we see that it's in the United States and Canada, a little bit in the United Kingdom, Thailand. So you see where it's most relevant to the people, how engaged are the visitors that are coming in, what are the traffic, what are the sites that are connected to it. So you see that there's some Google's connected to it, and Facebook, Reddit, Yahoo, sites that are linked to it. So pretty sites that a lot of people visit. Related links. Now this is important, the related links, Toronto Sun, National Post, things that are the same as it. So you'll see it like on a comparable, this is very much like this. It might be something that you already know. Other sites that are owned by this site itself, and it goes through a bunch of different ones. So you can see that it's pretty credible. It has quite a bit of other sites that I know that I'm fond of. It has sites, other websites that search engines that I would search that are credible. So just by looking at the analytics by using Alexia, I'm able to understand a little bit about the credibility behind the site itself. So it just gives you a small little look into what that might look like. And now there's a lot out there that may help you. And that first one that I went into has a lot of different sites. If you spent some time reading what it was, if you just typed in Alexia, it gives you different sites, and it actually beside it tells you what they do, and it really helps you look at different aspects of a website and how you might analyze it. So as we talk about the idea of interpretation and analyzation, what we really want to know is, how can we teach students how to think? How do we get them to think about all this data that's coming in? We made sure that it's credible, that we got this information, but now what do we do with this information? It's credible and that's fine and dandy, but what do we do now? So we need to really teach the students how to use different types of graphic organizers to be able to pull apart the information and organize it. So in order to interpret it, they really have to place it into spot and understand it, and to determine the relevance of information, build some new ideas and connections, possibly analyze the graphs and the questions, and compare sources that are coming in. When we're talking about evaluating websites, although it's within the idea of gathering and organizing, it's also much to do with analyzing as well, and really figuring out as to whether or not they're credible sources, right? So the first one we're taking a look at is the Holt Graphic Organizers. So these are interactive. I'm just going to head into the internet here. Now what you can see is that basically they have on all different parts of learning, whether it be generating and organizing details, determining main ideas, order and sequence, or comparing and contrasting, depending on what process you are in the inquiry, evaluating and making decisions. We see that there's a lot of different organizers. The great thing about these is that they're writable. So when we go into them, I can see that I can go right in and write my ideas into here. So you can see that I'm typing right into here. The good thing about this is that even though that I'm doing this and writing it at the moment, I can then go and decide to download it and save it and continue working on it as I go. It's not something that I have to finish right in the moment, but it is a lot of different organizers, and I can then place it, save it, and build upon it as my inquiry continues. So Holt interactive graphic organizers really do help our students learn how to think and be able to organize and visualize the information as they're working through the inquiry. Just gonna move back into here. We're just trying to find, sorry. I went into the internet and I lost my presentation. There we go. So the next one is read, write, and think. So the student interactives themselves, there's a lot of them that take them through the process. So we'll go back into here. Hopefully it'll let me out after this. And we see that there are a lot of different features. So they're interactive sites. And I just bring you into one of them. It's easier to see than explain here. So you see that it opens it up. So this is Trading Card Creator. And it asks them names and leads them through it. So the only thing about this is that as they're doing this, they're choosing a topic. whatever it is they may be talking about. So the event, World War. They could be doing that. And then it leads them through. So you see that it's going to continue asking me descriptions of the time period, location, cause, outcomes, reasons. It's going to bring me through all of these different parts of my basically organizing that first part of my thoughts and my research. However, the one thing about this is that you have to go through it all and complete it, and then you can then save it and or print it up. So really great interactives that really help the students think through the information, but they do have to sit down and finish it in that time period. The other thing is being able to use collaborative tools while you're interpreting and analyzing. So they're using things like OneNote class notebook to gather their information and go back and analyze, switch it around, or they're working within Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, collaborating with each other, building, adding information, and really getting together to figure out what it is all of this information is leading them to. So one thing we're looking at is the idea and the process of inquiry and what that might look like. And I wanted you to get an example of how it may look in a mathematics classroom. We've talked a lot about geography and science. How might that look like in mathematics?
In my work with schools in England and more broadly, we just try and encourage teachers to use what we would call a problem-solving approach.
Sorry about that. Sometimes it doesn't always do what you want it to do, but let's open this back up. There we go. Try that one more time.
In my work with schools in England and more broadly, we just try and encourage teachers to use what we would call a problem-solving approach. Teachers tend to teach the way that they were taught, and so you have a cycle continuing, a very traditional practice. And actually, if you walked into most maths classrooms now, they wouldn't look that different to classrooms in Victorian days. When I work with teachers, I really try to help them see that there are different ways of working on mathematics that can be very interesting for students. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the University of Sussex. My name's Professor Jo Bowler, and today we're going to be doing some maths together. So maths is really sort of all around us in the world, in nature, in art, in technology, but this is a particularly interesting shape, and we have it here in front of you. And what we're going to be thinking about today is how this shape is built, how it's structured. And the question we're going to think about is, how could you predict, without counting, how would you know without counting how many cubes are in that shape? So if you go back to your groups, pick up your beanbags and you can get going. Inquiry-based learning, I think for me, is having students use their own ideas and combine their own thinking with standard mathematical methods. So instead of just being taught standard methods which they practice and reproduce, it's about giving students opportunity to take methods and adapt them and apply them and use them to solve real problems. And in that process, they tend to be able to be a bit more creative and use their own thinking and their own ideas, which is usually much more interesting for them.
Why doesn't it work?
The equation a bit too long. I like giving students mathematical problems that are visual. That really helps them see standard mathematics and sort of makes it come alive for them. People have realised for a long time that engaging people actively, getting them thinking and using their own ideas helps them learn. It makes it more interesting for them. But it also shows them something which they may not know, which is that here's this maths problem that can be approached in a whole variety of ways legitimately, and you can sort of come to the same conclusion but through very different pathways, and that's an important message for students. Okay, if everybody would like to stop there. You've been working fantastically. We've got lots of different ideas from different groups. So what we're going to do now is have you come up and present some of your ideas. So I'd like you to get your posters, your cubes, and your beanbags, and all come into the central space. Really, I interpreting and understanding the world. And it's also a form of communication, like mathematics really is a way of representing the world. The way that seashells and pine cones and flowers are constructed all in the same ratio, which is really very interesting in parts of the human body. And so school children often know nothing about that maths is represented in nature and the world. And it's this very varied, multi-dimensional subject.
So to get the final formula, so there's two of these shapes, and the final end is the height of the column.
We thought that each side of these was a triangle, so we used half base.
I think it's hugely rewarding for teachers, and that's usually how you get teachers to use inquiry-based methods, is that they try it and they say, wow, these students are really interested and they're engaged and they're coming up with these great ideas, and it's quite a revelation for teachers sometimes. You know, it's rewarding to know that you're actually helping people go out and be able to solve problems in the world and they enjoy their learning. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of rewards for teachers.
As we move into the final stages of working towards the solution, I think it's so important in the video that you're listening to that idea of the students are coming up with multiple solutions. So as they're beginning to evaluate and understand and make some clear definitions of the problem and figuring out how they're going to communicate their results, they're really using different types of thinking skills and really what interests them to engage themselves in that problem itself. So how do we help students reach these conclusions and really support them in making critical judgments and thinking through? One of the most important things I think when we're drawing those conclusions is really helping them apply the analysis to some real life evidence and what that might look like in situations today and how we can use this information. When it seems something that it's useful to the overall picture of life, students really seem to connect to these ideas. And really just looking at that idea of math, they all saw the solution from different angles. And they were all able to really be correct in their own way, but they all were really using the evidence that they understood, the information that they've already gathered, whether it be past or present, from each other's discussions, and really building a solution from that idea.
Century skills for us means that we're constantly questioning the information that's put before us.
Looking at 21st century skills versus really just teaching the math.
I have to teach kids to adapt. I have to teach kids to come up with ways of doing things because things don't always work out the way we plan. We need to influence our students in a positive way and tell them that you have the ability to think on your own.
I find that my students are better communicators, they're better critical thinkers, problem solvers. They come up with wonderful inventions. They are excited and they implement cutting edge technology.
When you take a student and you put them in the field, they have some of the most creative ideas that you can imagine. And that's what we need in our country. That's what we need in politics. That's what we need in technology. That's what we need everywhere. We need solutions to problems, and they come from being creative with what you're doing. These kids get creative.
It's no longer me transmitting knowledge to them. They are finding their own information with the tools that we've learned, whether it's online or even in textbooks. They go search for the information for themselves. They make it their own.
I try to really teach them to think of problems and solutions from different angles, different perspectives, points of view. We give the information to the students and we expect them to give it back to us the same way. But with the 21st century skills, that's not what we should be expecting anymore. We should be expecting students to be responding in different ways. You're not meant to conform to one way.
I strive to promote citizens who are comfortable in their own learning and their own self-discoveries.
When a kid just basically regurgitates information that someone has told them or something that they've memorized, it's hard to just give that answer when the question isn't what is, or who is, or when was, or how much. When the question is instead, why is this? Or how would you handle this? Or what is the height of the flagpole? A question like that, a kid's not going to be able to answer. They wouldn't even be able to Google that because things differ so much. But if they can think critically and say, all right, I know 3 ways that I can find the height of this flagpole, and they sit there and think, and when they do get it, that light bulb kicking on is very rewarding.
I think the thing that students like best about being in my class is the freedom to express themselves.
One of the most important things about language learning that I have found is that when you connect with the culture, you start to understand the wheres and the why-fors and the reasons that other cultures think the way they do, and it gives us a heads up on what is going on in their cultures and why we react to them the way we do, why they react to us the way they do.
I pose a lot of questions to the students where they have to take a point of view, they have to take a perspective. I try to teach my students there's not always just one right answer to a problem. There's many right answers. It depends which perspective we're looking at it from. When we emphasize more of the students as the learners and them understanding how they learn and what it is they're learning, now they take responsibility for that. And I think if we want to see the outcome of it, it's going to be more responsible citizens in the future.
If there are problems out there, there are solutions. And that creativity and the innovativeness that children have, that natural curiosity that they're born with, they ask questions that I can't answer, but somebody somewhere might be able to. And they might even be able to answer their own questions. So in the future, if we have thinkers, if we have designers, if we have probers, if we have students that grow up and say, what if, and I bet I can, instead of, why do I need this, and I don't think I can.
I don't know what the future looks like. They don't know what the future looks like. They don't know what job they're going to have. I don't know what job they're going to have. We don't know what problems we're going to have in the future. But what the Compass to 2015 allows me as
So as we move that idea, I want you just to remember that critical thinking, how to teach students how to think, how to find a solution, how to figure out a problem, these are key to everything they do within their life, within each course they're going to take, when they move out into the world of work and find their vocation. All of this is imperative that they're able to be this creative, holistic thinker. As we're thinking through in the tech world and what that looks like digitally, we're helping them and giving them the tools to go back and revisit and evaluate. So the Padlet and Mindomo we talked about, they're moving back into those and taking a look. They're using discussion boards and really using their peers and teacher edits and conferencing to build upon and evaluate and draw conclusions together. One way, and I'm just going to quickly go into this, we looked at OneNote Classbook and how that could be used as both for collaboration, signing in here, and for the idea of building their personal inquiries. So I'm just moving into the OneNote Online. I am going to open it on my, I don't know why it's saying that. There we go. So what you can see here is I have my collaboration space where all of my students can come into. But if I go into one of my students, I want you to see that they can actually build their inquiry as we go along. So we move to the end of it, and I just want to show you that as they're beginning to evaluate and draw conclusions, they also have all of this in their personal notebook. Now, the teacher will see each student's notebook, but the student can only see their own notebook as discussed prior to when we looked at OneNote class. But here you look at that idea of formulating questions, and the students copied a JPEG or a PDF of the Mindomo that they created and beginning to ask questions. And they were able to insert that and place that within there. As they gather data, they can then use their Holt graphic organizers or the Read, Write, Think and save that and place that into here. And they can plan their inquiry. So they can have a graphic organizer which they're looking at and analyzing their sources. They're creating a start date, a completion date, and they're also creating a working bibliography and using really some resources and citing what they're researching in the facts that they're saving in. So they can use different things like Citation Machine. And that is a website that will help the students be able to cite the sources that they're coming across. If they're not sure how to cite what's online, whether it be electronic or even print resources, whatever they're doing, they can use this website in order to help guide them on how to create a citation. So sometimes if they're feeling anxious about this, show them how to do it and how easy it may be to actually cite and to keep a working bibliography as they're moving along. They're organizing their data. So you can see here, I can have my process chart where I'm filling in some information, and then I go back and I take that stuff from my graphic organizer and I begin to build with the data. So I can see this student is building towards a script with action and timing. So they're possibly going to do something like an iMovie or Movie Maker in which they're moving through this process. And as they evaluate, I can see here that we can use an organizer as well to evaluate the resources coming in on their relevance, reliability, the timeline. So are they current and dated? Their availability, were they easy or hard to find? Their bias, is it someone that is really more of an opinion compared to factual, and really the amount of information that it offers you. So you can offer something like this where you place this and you show them that you would like to have them evaluating the sources, not just the information themselves. So that's one small idea of how that might look with using Class Notebook. So here, I can see that I have my students up here, but they can also use a collaboration space. So this is their individual space where they're building their own knowledge on the inquiry. But in the collaboration space, you can see that we can work in groups. So every student in the class can come in and then build the criteria. So how much they think or what they should be marked on. We can come in and we can work on possibly generating questions together, analyzing case studies, maybe giving some ideas and solutions together of what that might be. So really, this is a space that the teacher can add as many pages onto and many different, whether it just be maybe by group, so a group collaboration page or a strategy collaboration page, depending on how you're going to be building the students' knowledge and really how much modeling they need and at what point are they at in really independently going through that inquiry process, or are you doing this together as a team? So I'm just going to move into the final idea of our inquiry is being able to communicate and create what we're seeing. So this idea here is helping the students get from the collection stage to the end product. And really, you can use different things like Excel survey and create a checklist of something that they're able to go through and be sure that they understand if they've gathered enough information, if they've analyzed, if they've used graphic organizers, if they've organized their data into an introduction, a body, a conclusion, and they understand how they're going to communicate all this information. Have they gone through each part of the process, and are they really to present it and explain their solution? Another thing that you're probably going to want to see is you're going to want them either to hand in or take a picture and add to their personal notebook some of their graphic organizers. You're really going to want to see their thinking along the way. Remember that inquiry itself is the process. You want to see how they move through the process, not just the end results. And finally, as we move into creating and communicating, remembering that we're taking our critical thinking tools now to help our learners create. They're designing, constructing, planning, producing, inventing, devising, building, all depending on what that solution is how they're really going to communicate their understanding of this question. In the tech world, this may look like filming, animating, blogging, video blogging, mixing, wicking, video casting, podcasting, producing something. So there's so many different parts to it. And really one of the ones that I find that are really valid all the way through secondary is building a digital portfolio. So even in itself, when I take a look at OneNote, go back into there quickly. Is it still there? There we go. When I go back into OneNote, I see a digital portfolio of their learning. So when I go to Matthew's here, I can move through and I can see each part and understand his thinking and where he was in the beginning, how he added upon it, depending on how many pages they have. And when Matthew begins to create here his final analysis, whatever it might be here, or it might be something that's an attachment on the side. If he's created a video, he can just add an attachment and insert here. He can insert audio throughout it, so I can hear his thinking. He doesn't always have to type. A file attachment, pictures to aid in whatever he may be doing to explain his thinking. So really, the digital portfolio, I can see the journey from the beginning to the end. And as a teacher, I really like to enjoy the journey along the way and watch them move from where they were in the beginning to really how the information really aided in their thoughts and helped them grow, and in what capacity that led them to, and even how their question may have changed from the beginning to the end.
Hello. So thanks for joining us today, and hopefully you were able to pick up on a few tips and some ways that we can support our inquiry with digital tools. You can go back and rewatch it if you need to. It is saved on our YouTube channel, as stated in the beginning. And if you have a moment, please go back to the link where you found the YouTube link and the document link for collaboration. At the bottom of that is an exit ticket. You could fill that out and just let us know how you think it went, and if you're looking for anything further as the months go on. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.